Is Tymna and Halana a formidable CEDH deck? Find out on today's episode. Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to ask a question. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out today's sponsor, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. They have three main services. Their standard service lets you send them your unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Halana piloting Thada Adel, Acquisitor. This deck seeks to steal artifacts from opponents' libraries and use them to win the game. Halana's opening hand contains a Gilded Drake, Unwinding Clock, March of Swirling Mist, Mana Vault, and 3 islands. Next, we have Sean piloting the partner pair of Dargo the Shipwrecker and Thrasios Triton Hero. This deck seeks to use Dargo as a combo piece for drawing cards, gaining infinite mana, and winning the game. Sean's opening hand contains an Elvish Mystic, Simian Spirit Guide, Chrome Mox, Cyclonic Rift, Displacer Kitten, Eldritch Evolution, and a Gemstone Caverns. After that, we have John piloting Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff. This deck seeks to stack the board, reanimate big creatures, and eventually win with a Walking Ballista combo. John's opening hand contains an Archivist of Ogma, Deadly Rollick, Authority of the Consuls, Entomb, Arid Mesa, Polluted Delta, and his Lenna Mulligan is a Demonic Consultation. Finally, we have Zeb piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Halana Kessig Ranger. This is a Hulk list trying to sacrifice Protean Hulk, assemble a creature combo, and win the game. Zeb's opening hand contains a Finale of Devastation, Samwise the Stouthearted, Vampiric Tutor, Soul Ring, Sylvan Library, Boseiju Who Endures, and an Entomb. Without further ado, let's kick off this crafty, calculated, calibrated calligraphy. Halana won the Don't Rush challenge and gets to start us off. But Sean has a pregame action, putting Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Simian Spirit Guide. Halana draws a card for turn and plays an island. She casts a Mana Vault and passes. Sean draws and casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting Cyclonic Rift. He casts an Elvish Mystic and passes the turn. John draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Scrubland onto the battlefield. He casts an Authority of the Consuls. John ends his turn. Zeb draws and plays a Boseiju Who Endures as his land for turn. He casts a Soul Ring and ships the turn. Halana draws and plays an island. She casts Unwinding Clock. Halana passes to Sean. Halana untaps her artifacts with Sean through Unwinding Clock. Sean draws and casts his commander, Thrasios Triton Hero. It enters tapped through Authority of the Consuls, and John gains a life. He casts Mox Opal and ends his turn. John draws and plays an Arid Mesa. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Godless Shrine onto the battlefield untapped, paying 2 life. He casts his commander, Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff. John gives the turn to Zeb. Zeb draws and casts a Sylvan Library. Zeb passes. Halana draws and plays an island. She casts the One Ring. It enters and Halana gains protection from everything. She activates the One Ring, adding a burning counter and drawing a card. Halana passes the turn. Halana untaps her artifacts, including the One Ring, with Sean through Unwinding Clock. Sean draws and casts Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing Elvish Mystic as an additional cost. In response, Halana activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 2 cards. Then Evolution resolves and Sean fetches up a Dockside Extortionist onto the battlefield tapped. Authority triggers and John gains a life. Then Sean creates 6 treasures. Next, Sean casts Displacer Kitten. Lotho triggers and John loses a life and creates a treasure. In response, Halana casts March of Swirling Mist where X equals 2, phasing out Dockside and Thrasios. Then Kitten enters tapped and John gains a life. Finished up, Sean passes. Halana untaps with John through Unwinding Clock. John draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a swamp onto the battlefield. He casts a One Ring of his own. In response, Halana activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 3 cards. It enters and John gains protection from everything. He activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing a card. John passes. Halana untaps with Zeb through Unwinding Clock. During his draw step, Zeb draws 2 extra through Sylvan Library, paying 8 life to keep them both. He plays a Windswept Teeth for turn. He casts a Lotus Petal. He cracks Windswept Teeth, pays a life, and fetches up a Scrubland onto the battlefield. He casts Avacyn's Pilgrim. Lotho triggers and John loses a life and creates a treasure. Then Avacyn's Pilgrim enters tapped and John gains a life. Zeb passes. At the end of Zeb's turn, Halana activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 4 cards. During her upkeep, Halana loses 4 life to the One Ring. She draws and activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 5 cards. She plays an island for turn. She casts a Spellseeker. It enters tapped, John gains a life, then Halana fetches up a Dramatic Reversal into her hand. She casts a Mana Crypt. Lotho triggers and John loses a life and creates a treasure. Halana casts Isochron Scepter. It enters and Halana imprints Dramatic Reversal. She activates Isochron Scepter, creating a copy of Dramatic Reversal, untapping her non-land permanents. She presents a loop of tapping her mana rocks for mana and untapping them with Isochron Scepter. She presents infinite colorless mana. She casts a Jeweled Lotus. She cracks it to help cast her commander, Thada Adel Acquisitor. She casts Mox Amber. She now presents infinite blue mana through the Iso Rev combo. Halana taps the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 6 cards. She uses Iso Rev to untap the One Ring. She does it again, drawing 7 cards, then 8 cards. She casts Seagate Restoration, drawing 34 cards. She uses the One Ring and Iso Rev to draw 9 cards. She casts all of the spells in her hand. She casts Walking Ballista, where X equals a lot. She then removes enough counters from Walking Ballista to kill Zeb and Sean. Halana passes the turn. During John's upkeep, Halana removes counters from Walking Ballista, killing John, and Halana wins the game. In this game, Sean's opening hand contains a Worldly Tutor, Phyrexian Metamorph, Greater Good, Lightning Bolt, Training Center, Rejuvenating Springs, and a Steam Vents. John's opening hand contains a Bolas' Citadel, Dark Ritual, Mana Crypt, Caves of Koilos, and his London Mulligans are Demonic Consultation, Praetor's Grasp, and a Krark Clan Ironworks. Zeb's opening hand contains a Culling the Weak, Lotho Corrupt Sheriff, Culling Ritual, Enlightened Tutor, Elves of Deep Shadow, Vampiric Tutor, and a Misty Rainforest. Halana's opening hand contains a Swan Song, Lotus Petal, Aquatex Will, Island, and her London Mulligans are Hidden Strings, Mox Diamond, and Steel Enchantment. And Sean gets to start us off. Sean draws a card for turn and plays a Rejuvenating Springs. He passes. John draws and plays a Caves of Koilos. He casts a Mana Crypt. He ends his turn. Zeb draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Savannah onto the battlefield. He casts an Elves of Deep Shadow and ships the turn. Halana draws and plays an Island. She casts a Lotus Petal and passes the turn. At the end of Halana's turn, Sean casts Worldly Tutor. In response, Halana casts Swan Song. Tutor is countered, and Sean creates a 2/2 bird. The turn moves to Sean. Sean draws and plays a Training Center. He moves to combat and attacks John with his bird. John takes it, and in his second main phase, Sean casts his commander, Thrasios, Triton Hero. Sean passes. During his upkeep, John wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays a City of Brass. He taps Caves of Koilos to cast Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He taps City of Brass to help cast a Bolas' Citadel. Citadel resolves, John looks at the top card and passes the turn. During his upkeep, Zeb taps his Elves of Deep Shadow to cast a Vampiric Tutor. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He draws and plays a City of Brass. He casts Deafening Silence. Zeb passes. Halana draws and plays an Island. She cracks her Lotus to help cast her commander, Thada Adel Acquisitor. She passes the turn. Sean draws and plays a Steam Vents into play untapped, paying 2 life. He pays 2 life to help cast Phyrexian Metamorph. It enters as a copy of Bolas' Citadel. Sean looks at the top card of his library and moves to combat. He attacks John with his bird. John takes it, and Sean ships the turn. During his upkeep, John loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and then pays 8 life to cast Razaketh the Foul-Blooded off of the top of his library through Bolas' Citadel. He taps his City of Brass and Caves of Koilos to help cast his commander, Lotho Corrupt Sheriff. He activates Razaketh, paying 2 life, sacrificing Lotho, fetching up a card into his hand. He plays an Arid Mesa for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Scrubland onto the battlefield. He casts Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Unfortunately locked out by Deafening Silence, John ends his turn. Zeb draws and taps his Elves of Deep Shadow to cast Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff. He casts a Mana Crypt. Lotho triggers and Zeb loses a life and creates a treasure. He casts his commander, Halana, Kessig Ranger. Zeb ships the turn to Halana. Halana draws and casts Aquatex Will, targeting John's Scrubland. She adds a Flood counter and draws a card. She moves to combat and attacks John with Thada. Since Thada has Island Walk, John cannot block. John takes it, Thada triggers, and Halana fetches up a Sensei's Divining Top from John's library into exile. Halana passes the turn. Sean draws and plays a City of Brass. He pays a life to cast Tinderwall through Bolas' Citadel. He sacrifices Tinderwall, adding 2 red. He taps City of Brass to help cast Greater Good. Lotho triggers, Zeb loses a life and creates a treasure. Sean sacrifices Thrasios to help cast his other commander, Dargo the Shipwrecker. In response, Halana casts Chain of Vapor, targeting Greater Good. Greater Good bounces, Sean sacrifices a land, copies the chain, targeting Razaketh. In response, John activates Agatha's Soul Cauldron, exiling Tinderwall from Sean's graveyard and giving Razaketh a +1/+1 counter. He then sacrifices Razaketh through Tinderwall's ability, adding 2 red. Then Chain fizzles, and Dargo resolves. Sean ends his turn. During his upkeep, John wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and pays 2 life to cast Grand Abolisher through Bolas' Citadel. He pays 3 life to cast Necropotence through Citadel. Lotho triggers and Zeb loses a life and creates a treasure. He looks at the top card of his library through Citadel. He activates Necropotence, paying a life and exiling the top card. He looks at the top card through Citadel again, then pays a life through Necro to exile it again. He does this 2 more times, paying 2 life, exiling 2 cards. He pays a life to cast Esper Sentinel through Citadel. He pays a life through Necro to exile the top card. He then plays a Ganjo, Seat of the Empire, as his land for turn. He activates Necro, paying a life and exiling another card. He moves to his end step and puts the Necro cards into his hand. He passes, discarding to hand size, exiling the discarded cards. During his upkeep, Zeb loses his mana crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and taps his Elves of Deep Shadow to help cast a Culling Ritual. Esper triggers and John draws. In response, John activates Agatha's Soul Cauldron, exiling Razakath from his graveyard, giving Grand Abolisher a +1/+1 counter. Still in response, he activates Razakath's ability through Cauldron, paying 2 life, sacrificing Esper Sentinel, fetching up a card into his hand. He casts Silence. Silence resolves, locking out opponents from spells this turn. Then Culling Ritual resolves, the permanents are destroyed, and Zeb adds 7 black. He moves to combat and attacks John with Halana. John reasons with him, asking him not to. Zeb persists and declares his attacks. In response, John casts Path to Exile, targeting Halana. Halana is exiled, and Zeb fails to find a basic land. With nothing else, Zeb passes the turn. Halana draws and plays an island. She moves to combat and attacks Sean with Thada Adel. Sean takes it, Thada triggers, and Halana fetches up a Soul Ring into exile. In her second main phase, she casts Sean's Soul Ring from exile. She casts Gilded Drake. It enters and targets Dargo. In response, Sean casts Lightning Bolt, killing Gilded Drake. All through, Halana passes. Sean draws and plays a Breeding Pool into play untapped, paying 2 life. He taps his City of Brass to help cast Greater Good. He moves to combat and, in response, John taps his City of Brass to cast Mandate of Peace. In response, Sean sacrifices Dargo to Greater Good, drawing 7 and discarding 3. Then Mandate of Peace resolves, locking out opponents from spells and ending the combat phase. With nothing else, Sean passes, discarding to hand size. John skips his draw step due to Necropotence. In his main phase, he plays a Mana Confluence for turn. He casts a Mox Amber. He casts a Springleaf Drum. He casts a Witchclaw Talisman. Finished up in more ways than one, John passes. Zeb draws, takes no actions, and passes the turn. Halana draws and moves to combat. She attacks Sean with Thada Adel. Sean takes it, Thada triggers, and Halana fetches up a Mana Crypt into exile. In her second main phase, she casts Sean's Mana Crypt. She casts the One Ring. The One Ring resolves, and Halana gains protection from everything. She activates the One Ring, adding a burning counter and drawing a card. She plays an island and gives the turn to Sean. Sean draws and casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters, triggers, and in response, Halana casts Stifle, targeting the trigger. Stifle counters the trigger, and Sean follows up by paying 3 life to cast Eternal Witness through Citadel. It enters, and Sean returns Worldly Tutor from his graveyard to his hand. He taps City of Brass to cast Worldly Tutor, fetching up a Phantasmal Image onto the top of his library. He pays 2 life to cast Phantasmal Image through Citadel. It enters as a copy of Dockside, creating 8 treasures. He corrects his treasures to help cast his commander, Dargo. He sacks Dargo to Greater Good, drawing 7 and discarding 3. He recasts Dargo, then sacks it to Greater Good, drawing 7 and discarding 3 more. He casts Mox Opal. He casts Chrome Mox, imprinting Cyclonic Rift. He plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He casts Displacer Kitten. He casts Lotus Petal. Displacer Kitten triggers, flickering Dockside, creating 8 more treasures. He recasts Dargo. He casts Birthing Pod. He activates Birthing Pod, sacrificing Dargo, fetching up a Tidespout Tyrant onto the battlefield. He casts 2 more spells, bouncing his Soul Ring and his Mana Crypt from Alana's battlefield to his hand. He presents a loop of casting and bouncing his Mana Rocks with Tidespout Tyrant, netting infinite mana and creating infinite treasures when he flickers Dockside through Displacer Kitten. He also bounces all permanents to their owner's hands. He casts Finale of Devastation, where X equals a lot, pumping his creatures and giving them haste. He moves to combat and attacks John and Zeb. They both die, and since Halana has protection from everything, Sean has to pass the turn. Halana draws and casts the One Ring. In response, Sean casts Mindbreak Trap, exiling the spell. Halana passes. Sean draws and casts a non-creature spell to flicker Eternal Witness through Displacer Kitten. Witness enters and returns Finale of Devastation to his hand. He casts Finale again, pumping his creatures. He moves to combat, swings with everything, killing Halana, and Sean wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fun pair of games tonight. Congrats to Halana and Sean on their wins. They were both able to get their engines going early, even through the stacks on the board. Halana was able to use the One Ring to her advantage and close out the game in 1 turn cycle. Sean was able to clone Bolas' Citadel, overwhelm his opponents, then use that to execute his combos. The most valuable card in tonight's games, sponsored by Luxury Playstyle, goes to the One Ring. Time and time again, this card is proving to be a powerhouse at the CEDH tables. In multiple instances tonight, there were issues when gaining protection from everything caused players to jump through extra hoops just to be able to win. This, combined with its raw card draw ability, makes it a real threat to be dealt with. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.